Mo Amer is back with his self-titled Netflix series, and just like before, he's blending laughs, touching drama, and pointed commentary for a dramedy that pushes buttons and maybe more. So are you going to watch? Najjar straddles the line between two cultures, three languages, and a ton of BS as a Palestinian on the path to U.S. citizenship. He finds himself stranded across the border and desperate to get back to Houston before his family's asylum hearing. But as a stateless refugee without a passport, he's going to need all the hustle and charm he can muster. So this type of storytelling reminds me a bit of MASH, where the underlying premise is a massive social commentary that's wrapped with enormous laughs and tear-jerking moments. Now, Mo Amer reprises his role, and right off the bat, he's in trouble, having been kidnapped and then transported to Mexico during the last season. Through this portion of the season, we get to see the circular nonsense that people have to go through to try and prove a negative, where they're in this catch-22 situation, have zero recourse or ability to get themselves out of this crazy cycle of immigration. I appreciate that while the show takes jabs at some of the ridiculousness and absurdity that bureaucracy creates, it does so with a huge amount of comedy, which I thought helped drive the point home even more effectively than if it were just some angry character ranting. Now, Mo is mostly funny and charming, but his passion and his exuberance do get the better of him quite often, making a lot of the story feel formulaic. Now, the story loses some of its edge when we can tell that Mo is going to be his own worst enemy at all the wrong times, which then further complicates the situation. Now, a lot of the scenes, they're still funny and impactful, but because they're predictable, they're not as effective as a whole. Now, one thing this does afford the series, though, is multiple opportunities for character growth. And I like that we get to see this come on slowly, so we don't have to wait the entire season before seeing improvement. But his growth also isn't linear, often making setbacks that make the story and character deeper. Now, obviously, with his immigration status and then finding himself trapped in Mexico, he's facing a huge character growth moment there. But we also get to watch how he matures in his outlooks and responses, whether that be with the Border Patrol or his fractured relationship with Maria. And each episode places Mo in a situation that tries his patience and resolve. And while he does at least partially fail almost every time, he also makes some slow forward progress, redeeming the character and ultimately making him sympathetic and endearing. This is a fast binge with 8 30-minute episodes, so it's not going to take long to get through. And while I do appreciate the expediency that this provides, it sometimes makes the storytelling feel rushed and skipping, meaning we sail through events and issues so that most are each resolved within the episode. And the larger arc, it's still intact and it reaches across the entire season. But the small setbacks or challenges that Mo faces each time, they tend to be resolved faster than maybe they deserve. And then we're on to the next roadblock. The community of friends that surround Mo, they're a lot of fun, but they also are caricatures of real people. So the exaggerations get tiring and even grating the longer certain characters are on screen. Take his friend Najjar. The dude is just over the top with his bros in an attempt to sound American, which I thought was funny to a point. But then it gets overdone, and I wanted to see the character less and less, even though he is an earnest dimwit who can elicit laughs. There's also a scenario with his friend Nick that involves Nick's family. And while this helps to create some situations that set up small dramas for the story to exploit, it also feels cheap and lazy, using a dynamic of an overbearing mom-in-law to create tension. It's okay in very small doses, but just like with Najjar, it gets old quickly. Now, something that does work amazingly, though, is the relationship that Mo has with his mom, sister, and brother. Now, this dynamic can sometimes be tense and strained, but also creates good laughs and some tearjerker moments. I loved watching all of the interactions, both with Mo and a family member one-on-one, and then as a group. There are rapid-fire conversations that are going in several different directions all at once, creating a very believable and relatable dialogue exchange. If you've ever had a family dinner where multiple conversations are going on at the same time, kind of like in While You Were Sleeping, this captures some of that same energy as the family works through stresses or celebrations. And then when the story tosses in the American outsiders into the mix, like with Yusra's husband Bob or the farmer Buddy, the culture clash, it is awesome. And it's played for sweetness and laughs instead of anger or hurt. Now, as part of Mo's growth this season, we get to watch him work alongside his mom and brother. And this introduces a massively touching and sweet sequence in episode 6 involving Samir, Mo's brother. And while it may have been somewhat obvious to viewers regarding Samir's neurodivergency, this is the first time that it's really been addressed within the show. And as somebody who's both neurodivergent and a parent of a kid like that, it's refreshing to see how they handle the entire situation. I mean, there's an incredible amount of realism in regards to a parent's desire to want to explain things away, to not come to terms that their child could process things differently than a lot of the rest of the world. But this also nails it on the head by reaffirming that different's not bad. Omar Elba, who plays Samir, he is brilliant with his character. He's sympathetic, endearing, genuinely likable. And there's this particular moment that he describes what he's feeling to a therapist. His reaction made me tear up and then chuckle. I mean, it was just a beautiful moment. And I get that this may not be a huge deal for a lot of people, but it stood out to me as one of the many key highlights within the dramedy that tackles real issues through compassion and humor. I know this show is going to elicit a bunch of polarizing reactions because the subject matter for a lot of it, it's a bit radioactive. But I love that it's tackling real issues and scenarios while also endearing us with lovable and quirky characters and a feel-good storyline that's not devoid of struggle and strife, but it also works to balance the real-world melancholy with laugh-out-loud craziness. The interwoven themes of family, belonging, justice, heritage, pride, and love, they all work together to capture a touching arc, giving a glimpse into what life could be like for somebody who's looking for asylum and trying to integrate into their new culture while not abandoning the values and traditions of their past. Some characters are overdone and become grating, and the story does feel choppy in spots, as the arcs are typically resolved in a single episode. But the poignancy of the plot, along with the beautiful family dynamics, outweigh those negatives and make for an engaging binge. There's no sex or nudity, but a lot of profanity and some violence. I give the second season of Mo 4 out of 5 couches. So have you watched any great dramedies lately? I'd love to hear about what you watched in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.